The Department of Justice continues its lawsuit against the state of Tennessee over a state law which would prohibit minors from obtaining transgender surgeries. North Korean hackers steal $3 billion in cryptocurrency, which they are using to fund their nuclear weapon program. And the White House announces that China has a spy base in Cuba, which apparently has been there since 2019. This is the news that you need to know for today, Monday, June 12th, 2023. But first, you know the drill. Be sure to hit the subscribe button down below so that you can be sure to check out any new news segments that come out, as well as segments from my show Timeless. And also consider following me, if you will, at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter. So I reported on Julie Noted a few weeks ago that the Department of Justice, which really should be called the Department of Injustice, is suing the state of Tennessee over a law that the state passed which would prohibit minors from obtaining so-called gender-affirming care, i.e. genital mutilation, in the name of supposedly encouraging or affirming one's decision to transition genders. So that happened a few weeks ago. But the deal is that it takes a long time for a lawsuit to be enacted and for it to be ruled on. So there's a little bit of an issue in the meantime, because while the Department of Justice is suing the state of Tennessee, this law, which again would prohibit minors from obtaining these so-called gender-affirming care surgeries, is slated to take effect in just 3 weeks on July 1st. So in the meantime, what is the Department of Justice going to do? Well, they have decided to do something, and it's called issuing an injunction. This whole situation is such an unfortunate microcosm of our woeful legal system as well as value system here in the United States. I'm going to explain what an injunction is, what it could possibly do in the meantime, and if there is any hope that this law may still remain in effect even though the Department of Justice under the Biden administration is doing everything that they can to try to stop it. But first, let's go back a little bit. Why did this law arise? Well, there are several states, including Ohio and Utah, which have passed similar legislation in order to protect youth from being the victims of these surgeries. But the reason why it arose in Tennessee is actually because of some great reporting by the Daily Wire, which exposed that the Vanderbilt University Medical Center was engaging in this so-called gender-affirming care on minors using Tennessee citizens' taxpayer money to fund it. Now, of course, the Vanderbilt University Medical Center was not very out in the open about this practice that they were engaging in. This is not a surprise. We saw this with the Boston Children's Hospital, the Duke University Medical Center. Hospitals that engage in this kind of treatment often do so clandestinely. They don't like to talk about it to the public. But the Daily Wire publicized that this medical center was doing it, and subsequently both Democrats and Republicans in the Tennessee state legislature came together and passed this law. Just a few days after the law was passed, now when the law is passed, it has an effect date, so it was passed a few weeks ago, but again, it's only going into effect on July 1st. Within just a few days after that, the ACLU, as well as some teenage plaintiffs, decided to sue the state of Tennessee, and then the Department of Justice, headed by Attorney General Merrick Garland, decided to kick it over the edge by getting involved. Can we just pause for a moment and contemplate that the United States of America's Department of Justice is spending its time and resources, our taxpayer money, not focusing on the fentanyl crisis, not focusing on the crime crisis, not focusing on the daily breaches of security that happen in this country and in every other country. No, the Department of Justice is suing the state of Tennessee because they are so upset that Tennessee is not going to give a 13-year-old a mastectomy. That is the situation that we're in this country. They have argued, they meaning the Department of Justice, have argued that Tennessee has violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution by passing this statute, discriminating against transgender youth diagnosed with gender dysphoria. And get a load of this. The DOJ in their lawsuit says that Tennessee, meanwhile, allows non-transgender minors access to the same or similar procedures. Yes. If you are a non-transgender minor in the state of Tennessee and some horrible accident has happened to you and you need your leg amputated, yes, maybe that is a similar access to a surgery that would have been granted to a transgender minor. But doesn't the context matter here? Of course not, according to the Department of Injustice, again, as I like to say. So now what they are doing in order to stall this further is to issue an injunction. What is an injunction? Basically, it is a temporary order that a judge can issue, which, at least for the meantime, blocks the enforcement of a law. This is a sneaky backdoor way to get your legal desires enacted. And we see both Democrats and Republicans using injunctions in order to block certain laws from being passed. For instance, during the Trump administration, when he passed legislation, or perhaps he issued an executive order mandating that the border wall be built, Democrats issued an injunction in Pasadena. So they pick a court, again, both Democrats and Republicans do this, they pick a court that is going to be sympathetic to their political views. They filed an injunction in Pasadena, which was granted in order to temporarily block the building of the border wall. The Supreme Court did end up overturning that federal injunction that was issued. But the point is, if you obtain an injunction, you can stall a law from being enacted for many months or weeks. And so this point that I mentioned here, that you can pick where to file the injunction, that is so crucial. You see here with the border wall dispute, Democrats did not file the injunction in a border state such as Texas or New Mexico or Arizona. They picked the Ninth Circuit, which is in Pasadena, California, to file the injunction because that's an overwhelmingly Democrat part of the United States, and they knew that the injunction would probably be granted. When Republicans want to file an injunction in order to prevent certain pro-abortion statutes from being enacted, they will file it in a red state like Tennessee or Kentucky or Georgia, for instance, because they know that it will be granted there. But we are in this situation now where so many injunctions are being filed, and it really stymies legislators' abilities and indeed their constitutionally given rights to pass laws on behalf of the people. So that is what we are seeing here with this never-ending seeming saga with the Department of Justice suing the state of Tennessee. They will probably go through with filing this injunction. The law will likely not take effect on July 1st, but the good news is that it will eventually be ruled on. And if it is ruled on in the state of Tennessee, it is likely that that Court of Appeals will side with the Tennessee state legislature, and give them the right to enact this legislation. Another piece of good news is that injunctions, because they don't suspend a law, they only temporarily halt the law, they could allow Tennessee to retroactively prosecute those who perform such surgeries. So if in the meantime, this Vanderbilt Medical Center is continuing this so-called gender-affirming care, if eventually this court rules that Tennessee was allowed to pass the law banning it for minors, this Vanderbilt University Medical Center could be prosecuted. Stay tuned, everyone. We will certainly keep you updated as more developments unfold. Now, moving on to international news. North Korea has announced, well, just kidding. Of course they haven't announced it. The United States has announced that North Korea apparently has a group of hackers which have stolen $3 billion in cryptocurrency, which they are being used to fund a massive nuclear weapon program. You can't make this up. It sounds like a prediction that someone made back in the 1960s in a dystopian novel that they wrote about what the year 2023 would be like. We're here. It is indeed seeming like a dystopian novel, but sadly it is reality. So what happened? A North Korean hacking operation attacked a Singapore-based blockchain company, actually a gaming company called Sky Mavis. The blockchain is an element of cryptocurrency, which essentially manages cryptocurrency on the web. And they stole over $600 million in cryptocurrency from online players of this blockchain game. Apparently, it's a digital pets game. So these hackers went in and stole this money. They have taken that money and they are using it to fund an estimated 50% of North Korea's ballistic missile program. This is according to US officials. And this ballistic program is being developed alongside the nuclear weapon program, which North Korea has been developing with ever-growing speed over the past few decades. Now, this is not the first time that we have seen a major hack coming from North Korea. You may recall back at the end of 2014, North Korean hackers actually got into Sony executives' computers because they were upset that Sony was going to release a film called The Interview, which was about a possible assassination attempt on Kim Jong-un. So North Koreans hacked the Sony executive's computer, exposed all of these embarrassing emails and also financial records, personal information of Sony executives as well as their family members, and released all of this secret information about upcoming films, upcoming media deals. It was a big, embarrassing breach for members of the entertainment industry, but it was also a huge national security breach that this adversary of ours could apparently so easily hack into one of the biggest companies in the United States. So we are seeing that North Korea, it appears, likes to use their hacking prowess as a weapon of international diplomacy. We're seeing here that they are expressing no remorse. They're not taking any responsibility for this hacking of the Singapore-based blockchain group. And according to our intelligence, they're not only expressing remorse or claiming responsibility, they are very easily taking that money and using it in order to develop more resources that can be used against its adversaries. That is, of course, weaponry. North Korea, as well as China, has invested a lot of money in technically educating their populace to make them adept engineers, computer savants, and indeed hackers. A lot of North Korean hackers pose as Canadian IT workers, government officials, and freelance Japanese blockchain developers. There's a historically adversarial relationship between North Korea and Japan, so it makes sense that that would be the identity that they would try to steal, freelance Japanese blockchain developers. What's interesting to consider about this story is that we are living during a time where so much new technology is being developed. Cryptocurrency really only emerged, in the past year or two, maybe 3 years ago. AI, we are seeing, is proliferating. Elon Musk was recently talking about AI this past weekend on his Twitter platform and how dangerous these technologies can be. And so not only are we seeing, both with AI and crypto, that there are issues posed by these technologies alone, but there's also a risk posed because there's not yet any rules in place to properly manage or protect these technologies. That's why North Korea can so easily hack a crypto company instead of an otherwise financial services company like a bank. The crypto world is not yet regulated. It doesn't have enough of a security apparatus surrounding it. North Korea is taking advantage of that vulnerability in the meantime. And our final news story of today, also pertaining to international relations, also sounds like a chapter of a dystopian novel. The White House has announced this past weekend that apparently China has developed a spy base on our neighboring country of Cuba. And apparently this spy base has been there for over 3 years, since 2019, okay? So the White House very secretly, very nonchalantly, low level, released this bombshell report. If you look at the covers of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times today, June 12th, there's nothing about this. Maybe it's in there. I think it's in some of the back pages of those newspapers. This should be plastered all over the cover, something that we should be talking about constantly. But no, it seems to be, oh, whatever, no big deal. Our biggest adversary is trying to spy on us right in our backyard, okay? Apparently, as I said, it's been there since 2019. Beijing is paying Cuba billions of dollars in order to maintain and allow the existence of this spy base. And just as icing on the cake, this spy base principally includes an electronic eavesdropping station, which would allow China to intercept calls and other methods of communication in the United States among U.S. officials. Cuba, for those who don't know their geography, is right off of the coast of Florida. Well, what's in Florida? Oh, you know, no big deal, just our U.S. Central Command base. Also, the United States Special Operations Command base, those are both in Tampa, Florida, and the U.S. Southern Command base is based in Miami. So do you think it's a coincidence that China is right there trying to develop this eavesdropping technology and otherwise spy technology literally just a few miles away from where all of our secrets and diplomatic data, domestic foreign data is? No, of course it's not a coincidence, but this is what China does. Anthony Blinken has said, don't worry, Americans, I've got this covered. I'm going to visit Beijing next month and talk about it with them. That is the extent to which the Biden administration has said that they are going to deal with this threat. The White House has come out and also given a very encouraging statement, quote, we will keep trying to enhance, China will keep trying to enhance its presence in Cuba, and we will keep working to disrupt it. What strong language here. I mean, it's so pathetic. What do you think previous presidents, FDR, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, even the Bushes, what do you think they would come out and say about this? Do you think they would go, oh, we will keep working to try to disrupt it? No, they would come out with, on principle, coming out against this. This is a breach of our security. This is a breach of the international order. But yet we allow China to do it, and we give these mealy-mouthed responses when they're just in our backyard, and that is what further allows them to continue to spy on us. They have already done so. That spy balloon traversed over the United States. It took 3 days for us to shoot it down until it was over the coast of South Carolina. China spies on hundreds of millions of Americans through apps like TikTok and WeChat, and we just totally allow it to happen. The final thing I'll say, which makes this an especially fascinating story, is that China is very deft in making its adversaries accomplices in their own demise. I have talked so much about China's strategy on the show, and I say that they are eerily brilliant because they go around the world, and instead of creating more enemies, they make friends. But they're not really making friends. They're acting like they're friends with these countries, but they're really buying these countries off. They're going into Iran, Colombia, Hungary, Singapore, literally all around the world, and building railway lines, building more infrastructure and technology so that those countries can drill and produce more oil. And here they are going into Cuba, trying to give Cuba billions of dollars and build this great infrastructure. But really, all of those countries are just the pawns of China. China is using them to advance their own stature. I have to hand it to them. It is a brilliant strategy. I don't think there has been any other country or civilization that has so deftly and effectively pursued this strategy. Usually, what countries do when they want to have another country do their bidding is they invade. Frankly, look at us in the Middle East in the early 2000s. Look at the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan and going and trying to initiate insurrections and other rebellions in various parts of the world. China has seen the way that works out for other countries and has gone, no, we're doing a different playbook. We are going to use these countries, act like they're friends, but they're really accomplices in their own demise. It's scary, but you heard it here. It shouldn't be a shock to us anymore. Thank you so much for joining me today. Reminder, hit the subscribe button down below and follow me at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter, as I say in my Boston accent. And I'll see you soon. Take care.